A simmering trade dispute between the United States and Canada has erupted into a full-blown crisis, sending shockwaves through both nations' economies and straining a relationship that has long been defined by cooperation and shared interests. With Alaska uniquely positioned between the two countries, the state now finds itself caught in the crossfire, its fate hanging in the balance as tensions escalate. In March 2025, President Trump announced a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian and Mexican imports, aiming to protect American jobs and industries from what he called unfair foreign competition. The move was met with immediate concern from business leaders and economists, who warned of potential retaliation and economic fallout. Canada responded immediately. Prime Minister Trudeau condemned the move in a televised address, calling it a direct attack on Canadian workers and industries. The Canadian government swiftly imposed retaliatory tariffs on a wide range of American goods, from agricultural products to manufactured items, signaling that they would not back down. Provincial leaders across Canada began crafting their own countermeasures, escalating the conflict further. Some provinces even threatened to restrict the flow of critical goods and resources to the United States, raising the stakes for communities on both sides of the border. The new tariffs threatened to raise prices on everything from lumber to groceries, disrupting supply chains and shaking the very foundation of U.S. Canada economic ties. Businesses in both countries are bracing for shortages, and consumers are already feeling the pinch as shelves begin to empty and costs climb. For Alaska, the stakes are even higher. The state relies almost entirely on the Alaska Highway, which runs through Canada for the delivery of vital goods and supplies. Any disruption to this lifeline could have devastating consequences for Alaskan communities. As Canadian provinces target this vulnerability, Alaskans face the real fear of isolation and economic hardship. Families worry about how they'll access food, fuel, and medicine if the border remains tense or closes altogether. The dispute is no longer just about tariffs. It's about Alaska's very connection to the rest of the nation, and whether the state can weather the storm of a trade war that threatens to sever its most critical supply lines. British Columbia Premier David Eby escalated the dispute by announcing new tolls on all commercial trucks traveling through the province to Alaska. This direct move targets Alaska's dependence on the highway, using it as leverage in the trade war. The tolls would hit high-value, time-sensitive goods, fresh produce, industrial equipment, making them even more expensive for Alaskans. The Alaska Trucking Association warned of severe supply chain disruptions and logistical chaos. For decades, the Alaska Highway symbolized U.S. Canada partnership. Now, it risks becoming a barrier to commerce. British Columbia's strategy highlights how even smaller players can wield power by controlling critical infrastructure. Alaska's only land route to the lower 48 is now a strategic pawn in a high-stakes geopolitical chess match. The economic pressure is immediate and personal for Alaskans. The proposed tolls threaten to sharply increase Alaska's already high cost of living. Everyday essentials, milk, lettuce, fresh produce, would become even pricier, squeezing family budgets. Alaska's oil and gas industry, reliant on timely truck deliveries, could face costly delays and production halts. Small businesses would struggle with higher costs and supply disruptions, risking layoffs and closures. The tolls would ripple through the entire economy, stifling growth and discouraging investment. Alaska's reliance on a single land route through Canada, once managed by friendly cooperation, is now a glaring liability. The trade dispute has shattered the sense of security that once defined cross-border relations. Alaskans now realize their access to essentials is at the mercy of international politics. Uncertainty and anxiety have replaced decades of predictability. Alaska's leaders are walking a tightrope, defending state interests while urging calm in the face of mounting tensions. The situation is delicate, and every word or action is being carefully weighed, as the stakes for Alaska's economy and communities are high. Governor Dunleavy has called for restraint and a diplomatic solution, hoping to avoid further escalation. He's been in close contact with federal officials and Canadian counterparts, emphasizing the need for open dialogue and mutual respect to resolve the dispute. Truckers, facing soaring costs and logistical nightmares, warn that the tolls threaten their livelihoods and Alaska's supply chain. Many drivers say they're already struggling with fuel prices and long hours, and these new barriers could push some out of business entirely, leaving shelves empty and communities isolated. Senator Dan Sullivan has taken a hardline stance, threatening to retaliate against Canada's cruise industry. He's called for congressional hearings and is rallying support from other lawmakers, determined to show that Alaska will not back down. His message is clear: Alaska won't be a helpless pawn in this dispute. The state's leaders are united in their resolve to protect Alaskan interests, even as they seek a peaceful resolution. Meanwhile, ordinary Alaskans voice frustration and fear, worried about being collateral damage in a political fight. At town halls and on social media, residents share stories of rising prices and uncertainty about the future, wondering how long they can endure the strain. Many stress the importance of preserving personal ties with Canadian neighbors, despite the actions of distant politicians. For families and friends living near the border, these relationships are a lifeline, built on years of trust and cooperation. The focus for most is simple: keep groceries on shelves and life moving. Alaskans are resilient, but they know that disruptions to trade and transport could have real, immediate impacts on daily life. The risk is that long-standing friendships across the border could be damaged, and the sense of community that has defined the region for generations could be lost if the dispute drags on. Above all, Alaskans just want to live without being used as leverage in a trade war. They hope for a swift resolution so they can return to the peace and stability that makes their state home. British Columbia's tolls are just one part of a nationwide Canadian response. Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S., targeting American states reliant on Canadian power. In the Yukon, Premier Pillai halted liquor store purchases from U.S. companies and restricted American access to government contracts. These measures, while not aimed at Alaskans personally, are a clear defense of Canadian sovereignty. Ottawa has rolled out its own retaliatory tariffs, targeting politically sensitive American products. The Canadian response is coordinated and comprehensive, uniting provinces and the federal government. British Columbia has even expanded its boycott to include products from Republican-led states, including Alaska. The message to Washington, Canada will fight back with every tool at its disposal. In the Yukon, public anger is fueling a wave of creative and sometimes extreme retaliation ideas. Premier Pillai has received calls to ban Donald Trump Jr. from the territory and to bar Alaskan athletes from the Arctic Winter Games. There's also talk of adding a second toll on the Alaska Highway, doubling the financial pressure. While some proposals are symbolic, they reflect a deep sense of betrayal and frustration. The Premier must balance public anger with the need to preserve long-term relationships with Alaskans. The trade war is straining personal and cultural ties that have bound northern communities for generations. Alaskans and Yukoners have long been friends and allies. Now that goodwill is at risk. The risk is that economic conflict could devolve into lasting bitterness and division. The human cost of the dispute is becoming painfully clear. As Canada threatens Alaska's land route, the U.S. is targeting British Columbia's tourism economy, the Alaska cruise industry. Senator Sullivan has proposed waiving the Passenger Vessel Services Act, allowing cruise ships to bypass Canadian ports entirely. This would devastate cities like Vancouver and Victoria, which rely on cruise ship revenue. The threat is real. During the pandemic, the U.S. temporarily allowed ships to sail directly to Alaska, bypassing Canada. Now, the legal and political tools exist to make this permanent. The cruise ship issue raises the stakes, turning a regional spat into an international gamble. Alaska's tourism industry is anxious, while Canadian bookings are already dropping. Each side holds a critical piece of the other's economy hostage. Thousands of jobs and billions of dollars hang in the balance. The standoff is tense with no easy resolution in sight. By late July 2025, the standoff between the United States and Canada remains unresolved. Tariffs have been delayed for now, but both countries are quietly preparing their own retaliatory measures, signaling that the conflict is far from over. Tensions simmer beneath the surface, and uncertainty hangs over every shipment that crosses the border. The once strong U.S. Canada friendship is now deeply fractured, with both sides digging in and refusing to back down. What was once a model of international cooperation has become a battleground of political posturing and economic threats. The best hope for both nations lies in high-level negotiations, where diplomats and leaders work tirelessly to find common ground. Only by rolling back tariffs and restoring trust can normalcy return to the border. Yet entrenched positions and mounting political pressures on both sides make a quick resolution seem increasingly unlikely. Every day, the stakes grow higher as leaders face criticism at home and pressure from powerful interest groups. If talks fail, the conflict could escalate into a full-blown trade war, threatening to devastate workers and industries on both sides of the border. The ripple effects would be felt in every corner of Alaska and British Columbia. In Alaska, families are already bracing for higher prices and supply disruptions. Everyday essentials become harder to find, and the cost of living continues to climb. Meanwhile, British Columbia risks losing its vital tourism lifeline, as visitors stay away and local businesses struggle to survive the downturn. The long-term damage to cross-border relations could take decades to repair, leaving scars on communities that once thrived on cooperation and shared prosperity. This crisis is a stark reminder of just how fragile the U.S. Canada relationship can be, even after generations of partnership and peace. The fate of countless businesses and families now hangs in the balance, dependent on the choices made by leaders in Washington and Ottawa. Their decisions will shape the future for millions. For now, two old friends stand divided, separated by uncertainty and mistrust, with the road ahead more uncertain than ever before.